Well, hello, HEMA world. Thank you again for watching. This is Fighting Words. I'm Jonathan Marshall. This is Kyle Tully, and we're having kind of a chill night tonight. We're just sitting around the kitchen table with, well, I've got coffee with booze in it. I'm not even sure what that is at this point.
Lighter fluid.
Sure, probably. And we're doing a bunch of shop talks tonight. Just things that some of our viewers have asked us to talk about. We're trying to talk for 15 or 20 minutes and give you guys an idea of, at the very least, our opinions on these topics. So hopefully you'll find this informative and you'll enjoy it. Right now, we are going to jump in and talk about how to be a good judge and or ref. So before we can actually talk about that, though, we realized, discussing what we wanted to say, that there's some term definition that's strongly needed before we can have this conversation. Kyle's going to do that.
Okay, so the first thing is we're going to differentiate a judge versus a ref. Judges will typically be the person who is calling out points, as in they've seen a strike that is worthy of the scoring system of the tournament.
Or indicating that they did not see one. Either way.
Right. But a lot of times you'll hear them yell like point, or they'll yell hit, something like that. And usually the center ref, who will get into their job later, is the one who makes the final call. So like if two people hit, the action has been stopped, the judges are going to be the ones who indicate whether they saw a strike and its point value, sometimes they're judging for both people, so they'll have two different sticks. Sometimes they're only judging for one person, and we'll go over the pros and cons of that here in a second. But they are the ones that are judging the quality of the fight and the techniques primarily.
Well, the ref is generally the person referred to as running the ring. That's kind of the easy way to tell the role differential there, regardless of what they're called. Judges and refs is what Simbrogi calls them in their rule set, which is clearly what Kyle and I are most familiar with, so we're going to use that terminology. But we've seen lots of different names for them. It doesn't really matter. Usually there is a person running the ring, and then other people observing and giving that person information.
Right.
Those people observing are judges. The person running the ring, for the sake of this conversation, is the ref.
Yeah. Also usually referred to as like the center ref, because he's literally in the center of the ring or off to the side on the center. So
I think you guys get it. We just wanted to make sure you knew what we were talking about.
All right.
So we're going to start by talking about how to be a good judge and what that requires, and then we're going to talk separately about being a ref at the end. And this is for a couple of reasons. First off, because it is a different skill set. They're different jobs. You need to understand that. And second, because way more of us are going to be judges than will be refs. It's just how it works, because you always only have one ref with the definitions we're talking about. But I've seen everything from 0 to 4 judges per ring, per fight. So there's always more judges, or almost always more judges. And so lots of us wind up getting roped in, being pulled in from the stands after our pools, things like that. This is advice for you on how to be better at that. And I'm going to start the very first thing, and if you listen to nothing else about this and are thinking of judging any time in your life for a martial arts event, this is the piece of advice to remember. Practice, practice, practice. It is not binary. It is not either good or bad. It is a skill, just like anything else we practice and drill. If you don't spend time working at it and making mistakes and being corrected and getting better, you will continue to suck. Your first few times will suck. Everybody's first few times judging, you will make bad calls. Everybody's 100th time judging, they will make bad calls. It's a skill, kind of an art. And the more you practice it, the better you'll be.
Because your job is to make the number of good calls go up and the number of bad calls go down.
Correct.
But to get good at something, you first have to suck at it. And most of us, when we get into HEMA or any type of like sparring situation or competition, we want to just hit people, and that's all we want to worry about. But because most locations and events don't have a professional staff that is set up to do all of that for you, you are probably going to be asked to volunteer at some point.
Which is good. You should be willing to.
Yeah, but if you're going to be willing to, you want to be able to do it right. So let's talk about practice, practice, practice. So one of the key ways of practicing is if you are hosting a tournament, or you plan to go to a tournament, you need to be sparring rounds under that rule set and be literally right there practicing being a judge. That's one of the easiest and best ways, is make your own micro version of what's going to happen at the competition and practice it over and over and over again. Because that is the best way to get exposed to it. I can't state this anymore loudly. You have to just give up your training time developing your fighting skills so that you can develop this skill set. Because if you don't, not that if you're a bad fighter, you're not going to be a bad judge.
No, not necessarily.
And there's a lot of people who aren't magnificent fighters who are really great judges. Their ability to pick up on stuff is amazing.
And there are people who suck at judging who I don't ever want to fight in an elimination bracket because they'll kick my butt every time. They're incredible fencers, but they can't judge for crap.
Mm-hmm.
It's a different skill.
Now, because of the pandemic, you might not have access to doing that.
True.
So one of the things you can do is find old tournament footage and start watching as a team. And then before they show the points, you pause the video and you ask the person and or group in a message or whatever you want to do it, what did you think happened? And then that's a way of also training. Sometimes just watching sparring and just trying to track each other's weapons in it, whether in live or on video, is helpful. It helps you practice. Okay, who got hit? How did they get hit? Was it a double under this rule set? This rule set doesn't even apply to the video. It's like, what would we think on that? These are different ways you can practice, and you should if you are going to go to a place where you know you could judge.
Or if you want to. And I maybe this is controversial. I don't think it should be. If it is, y'all can yell at me in the comments. That's fine.
Yell at him.
Yeah. No,
I don't read them.
It's okay to say no. Like, if you don't practice to judge and you get to the tournament and everybody's helping you. Yeah, and everybody's volunteering and they're asking for volunteers to judge because they not always. I went to a tournament that they didn't ask anybody to judge, and that was actually really nice. But usually they do. It's not a bad thing, and it's very exciting to be a part and to jump in and do that. Mm-hmm. Man, though, if you're not ready, if you're not practiced, and again, that's not about how good your fencing is. It's about this skill, judging. If you don't know how, if you haven't practiced at it, if you don't know the rule set, which is our next point that you're going to talk about in a minute, it's okay to say no. I think most of us, from a running a tournament perspective and fighting in it perspective, would much rather you say no than be an inexperienced or ineffective judge during the elim rounds.
I can tell you that I have been to events where I was angry enough at the judging at the event that I didn't even want to finish the event because the people that had been voluntold, as in, like, if you are this, you have to judge this. And I was like, well, one, think it should always be voluntary, but second, if you know that's going to happen, you need to do some, because I would rather get waylaid by the best fighter there than deal with bad judging.
Yeah.
Straight up.
Now, that being said, I recommend it is be a goal of every fencer. Every HEMAist should have it as a goal of theirs to get better at judging and be a competent, available judge when they go to a tournament. It's polite. It just is. Like, it's what it is.
It helps everybody.
Yeah, but don't pretend that just because you can fight in an event that you can judge that event. Because sometimes you don't practice at judging, and sometimes, awkward segue.
All right, let's get into the rules stuff, and then we're going to get into the bias stuff that she's trying to segue me into. First off, if you are going to go to an event, whether you are judging in that event or fighting in that event, you need to know the rules. I cannot say this enough. Know the dang rules. I am so tired of when I go to an event.
Woo, we got rant, Kyle.
I'm sorry. It just gets that way. It's like, I've done it. I know it frustrates others. I know it frustrates me when I'm trying to run. It's like, well, are we allowed to do... Why didn't you read the rules? If the rules are that complicated, you should have messaged the person who's running the event to call you or leave you a message or talk to you in some way to explain them. Know the rule set, especially if you're going to judge, because some events cuts to the body count. Some they don't. Some cuts to the legs are allowed. Some they're not. Sometimes thrusting, if you bend the sword in half, they're going to yell at you. You need to know what the rules are.
This is especially true if the rule set includes anything about, like, quality of strike. The quality points is
quality points.
And that's not a diss on quality points. That's a different topic we'll talk about some other time. But if quality points exist, don't agree to judge if you don't know how to judge those.
Right.
You have to know the rules, or you're not going to be successful. And I'm not saying that to be crappy or to, like, downplay anybody. I want everybody involved. I want everybody volunteering.
I made this mistake. You don't want.
But for your sake, if you don't know how to award quality points under that rule set, don't try. You're going to feel frustrated, and you're going to have people frustrated with you, probably for good reason, even though your intentions were fantastic. Know the rule set. And if you don't know the rule set, recuse yourself. You're not a good person to judge if you don't know the rule set.
Right. And don't suspect that you can show up and learn the rule set on the day and know all of it.
You can't.
You need to know.
I promise you can't.
Yeah, it's just not going to work. Okay. So, next up on this wonderful list is if you're a judge. Yeah, we have a big list. If you're a judge, whether you like it or not, the ref is the one in charge. I have seen arguments between a judge and a ref, and I'm sitting here going like, I've dropped my $200. I have taken days off, which has cost me more than $200.
Right.
I have driven, I've spent money on lodging, on food, and all of this, and now I'm watching two people with egos battle it out like male walruses on top of each other over a simple flesh hit, like a light hit.
Yeah.
And I'm like, just make us redo it. But then they don't want to hear from you because you're the fighter. If you're a judge and the ref does not agree with you, tough. You're not the ref.
Yeah, it's not your place to make that point or to make that call. If you're the center ref, it is, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But if you're not, your job is to say what you saw.
Mm-hmm.
Say what you saw. Let the chips fall as they may. You have to, and yeah, we'll argue about it for months afterwards sometimes if we think the ref made the wrong decision.
Years.
Or the judge. Yeah. When I was complaining last week about that call in Colorado, I'm still sore about. I'm not mad at anybody specifically, but I'm still sore.
Mm-hmm.
You know, of course we're going to talk about it for a long time. But in the moment, you can't argue with the ref.
Right. You just need to give them the information you have and state what you know. And then this isn't 12 Angry Men where you're going to try to argue your way through something.
You're not the hero, I promise.
You're not the hero in this situation. Your job is to be a component, a cog in the machine to help other people. Your service industry at this point.
That's a good example. Yeah.
You're here to help other people. So,
yeah, and part of that is, I think this is a decent segue, is you have to understand your bias. Everybody has one.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to walk into every ring that you judge with some kind of bias. And we have written down here like two specific examples we want to give. And the first one is, for example, your angle. If you're standing, behind a fighter when you see them throw a strike, you have to understand when you're making that call about whether or not they hit, what you can and what you cannot see. You're behind them. Mm-hmm. If you're to the side and the strike is across the fighter's bodies from you, there's not a problem with you saying what you think you saw.
Mm-hmm.
But know your biases, know what you can't see as much as you know what you did see.
Also, a quick psychological deal from social psych. If these two people are right here and I'm watching them directly on, it's pretty balanced. If I am canted, whoever I see more of, especially the front of them, I can see what they're doing versus the person I can't see. I'm more likely to be biased toward that fighter because of that angle. Vice versa. So if I'm calling for this person and I can only see the front end or mostly the front end, 80% of their front end, 20% of their front end, then I need to move so that I can, because if this person is the person that I am trying to call points for, they're hitting this person, I need to be able to see them and what their weapon is doing. So make sure as a judge you move around and you get an angle.
Yeah, kill your bias as much as you can. And for angle, that means moving, which is part of practice. The more you practice, the more you'll understand where, in relation to the fighters, you should be to have the best view and the least positional angle bias. And I don't want to go down this rabbit hole in this exact moment, but just, is that 80-20 thing you were talking about right there? That implicit bias we get from seeing people, is that like a psych thing, or is that just about field of vision?
It's even for authority. If I see more of the other person in an argument than I see the other person, I'm going to view them as an authority versus the other. It's a weird social psych thing. I'll send you.
We won't go down the rabbit hole, but I'm intrigued. That's
another bias though that you want to definitely look out for is people that you know and or teammates. You have to know that when you walk in there, whether you like it or not, if I see these colors on somebody, right, I'm naturally going to have to look at myself in my mental mirror, because I don't keep an actual one, and go, I have to make sure that I'm not just giving favor towards someone I know. I have to acknowledge that that's a real thing and be as unbiased as possible. That may even, and I've had to do this, you have to, even your friend looks at you afterwards and go, why didn't you call that for me? And it's like, didn't see it. Sorry, dude. It's like, I totally got that. It's like, I know, man, but I can only state what I know And if I feel like I don't know, but it's like, well, I know Josh or I know Jonathan, it's like, nope, that's thinking that you're biased. You have to just say, I didn't see it, and move on.
And this is particularly difficult. I've seen this so many times. I've done it. I'm not trying to put myself on a pedestal here. This is a mistake I have made and had to correct in myself. We especially wind up in tournament settings where tensions are way up here and emotions are way up here.
The drama's hit.
Yeah, the drama has hit, and you've got, Kyle. I'm going to use you as an example here. Kyle goes into the ring, and I've been training under Kyle for years. I've watched him beat masters. He's clearly one of the most skilled fencers I know. He kicks tail everywhere he goes, and I watch him walk into the ring opposite somebody who I know has only been fighting for 2 or 3 months. I have second-guessed my own eyes when I see the newbie hit somebody like Kyle, simply because my brain doesn't want to believe that Kyle got beat by a newbie. Like, there's a dissonance or something, and I am inclined to not put weight in what I saw as much because of that bias. It's just natural. It's just normal. What matters is that you're aware of it. Not if I clearly see that Kyle beat the newbie, I need to say so. If I didn't see Kyle hit, the fact that I think he probably could have doesn't matter.
And the reverse of this is also true.
Yeah.
Rivalries and nemesis exist. This is why sometimes
my mother would call them your green-eyed monster.
Oh, I would call them like my... never mind.
Nice.
So one of the things that can happen, and this is why I have a staunch belief in this, you should not judge for the event that you're competing in, because I might, implicitly or not, see somebody who I know is going to be a challenge, and or I just don't like them. Okay, it's very rare that I don't like people, but when I don't like them, sometimes I have to go, it's not going to be good for me. Like, I need to take a break. This is not going to be an unbiased round, so it's okay to recuse yourself, but also knowing, like, I have to lean a little bit more toward the person I don't like, because I know I'm going to try to tilt it the other way.
Yeah, just like bending an antenna backwards to get it straight again. Like sometimes you have to think
or like a sword, like whenever it's bent this way. Yeah, you can't.
Just hey, there we go. Specific human example.
You can't just bring it center. You got to try to go a little bit further, because I know I have an implicit bias. If I see this person who I'm like, I hate this guy's fencing, but the rule set allows it. It's like I have to just either recuse myself or make sure I'm leaning it back the other direction a little more, because I know my bias. And if I can't get over that, recuse yourself, walk away, do it because it's fair to the person.
Yeah. Now, and I want to clarify, like, the official advice that I would absolutely have for you is don't ever judge in an event that you are also fighting in. It's complicated. It can be frustrating for a lot of people. I don't recommend it. You shouldn't do it.
You're already exhausted.
However, this is a small hobby. Let's be realistic here. We're all in this together. We're all here to have fun. Most of us have phenomenal attitudes about it. And so most of the time people do wind up judging an event they're in. Don't be salty about that. And don't necessarily just recuse yourself because you're in the event. If they're clearly pulling people from inside the event because they need people to help and you are able to help, I recommend you do so. That's the good person thing to do. But directors and people planning tournaments, strong recommendation. Very strong recommendation. I think you agree with me. Try real hard not to ever pull people from the event to judge other people fighting in that event. It creates way more complications than are worth it.
Have a team if you can. Okay?
Yeah, for sure.
So let's move on, because I think we're going to beat that one to death. The next thing is really good for you to judge events based on a weapon system you are familiar with. My example for this is sword and buckler. Sword and buckler is very hard for newbies to judge. And newbies, I mean newbie to either judging and or they don't know how to fight with sword and buckler. Because sword and buckler, you have an obstructing item in play where as I block, I may hit and it may go underneath the shield. Yeah. I need to know how these things can move around each other, like the different ways people get hit by a weapon. And sword and buckler is extra complicated because, I mean, the only one worse than it is either rotella or the damn cloak, and that obscures things.
I think dagger. I think dagger's the worst.
Dagger is really...
That's a pet peeve, so
yeah.
I'll
but if you're not familiar in how the weapon works or how it strikes or how it hurts somebody or how it doesn't, then you're going to be lost. And if you're not sure, like, oh, because in this event, we're not allowed to thrust with the weapon. You didn't know that. So you're calling thrusts.
Which kind of goes back to knowing the rules of the event you're in.
So
but sometimes there's things that aren't stated in the rules because they're accepted as common knowledge in that weapon system. All judging requires a knowledge of some of the subtleties of the sport you're judging, of the martial art that we're trying to quantify in that way. If you have spent most of your time learning the subtleties and practicing the subtleties of longsword and have no idea how Dusac works other than the crossover it has with longsword, which is plenty, and sure, you'll probably pick up Dusac easier because of your work with longsword, don't judge Dusac. Don't do that. You don't know it. You don't know the subtleties. You don't actually know what you're watching for. So say so. If somebody's asking you to judge, I'm going to use that example. I don't know if it's silly or not, but if you're a longsword fighter and that's all your experience is, and somebody asks you to fight Dusac, judge Dusac, be honest with them. Tell them you don't know the system, that you're not familiar with it. If they still want you and they need the help, man, I'm not here to tell you to be a jerk to them. Help out, but be honest about your biases and know your limitations.
For a quick rundown, because sometimes there was, I think in New Brunswick they weren't allowing thrusts with Dusac. So like,
oh man, I don't even remember. I fought in that tournament.
I remember talking to Christiane about it because she was kind of like, why aren't we allowed the thrust? Because the weapons they had didn't flex.
Oh, that's right.
So like, so like for us, we do a lot of thrust work with Dusac. So that. If I was judging and they just walked over and said, hey, Kyle, you want to judge Dusac? I'm like, oh, yeah. And it's like, oh, yeah, he got a thrust on him. And somebody's going to walk over and go, it's like, so I'm calling a point. And they're like, well, he obviously just thrusted him, so that doesn't count. It's like, that's going to cause a commotion of some sort.
Which is also a word of caution to tournament directors and people planning tournaments. Don't assume anything. Yeah. Don't assume that your understanding of the weapon is going to transfer over to people that you're getting to volunteer. Say what you mean.
Only assume we know nothing.
Yeah. So. Yeah, very good.
Okay, so another thing is that life is short. Don't over-argue or overstate your point with anyone. Realize that as a judge, your job is to assist the center ref.
Yeah.
Your job is to say what you can. Don't sit there and turn this into like, I'm going to take over the ring. Don't try to overly become a lawyer about things. Just do your job and do it the best you can. And sometimes that means you have to let things go that you don't agree with.
Yeah.
Because the many outweigh the few in this situation. And if you have to, talk to the center ref afterwards. Don't argue with the other judges. Don't argue with the fighters. Don't argue with the audience. I've seen all of that happen. And it is terrible for everyone involved and everyone who witnesses it.
This is especially true after the exchange is over.
Yes.
Hours after the exchange is over.
Yeah.
I don't care if you have an opinion and express it. I don't care if you disagree with the center ref. I don't care if you want to talk loudly about how you think, even though you were one of the judges at this point, was awarded wrong. That's fine. I don't recommend it on like an interpersonal level, but what you don't ever want to do is, as a judge, as somebody who was part of that decision, to get involved in an argument about that decision. Mm-hmm. There is no positive way for that to end.
I mean, it's already done. Just move on. And if it's just like the center ref is God at this moment, there's nothing you can do. Just radically accept that your role and move on with it.
Okay. And then last point for judges. And this is a personal pet peeve of mine, so I'm going to rant. Maybe this is Jonathan's rant time. I don't know. Don't show indecision. You either saw it or you didn't. And if you're not sure you saw it, you didn't see it. That's how it works. And I'm not trying to, like, be that intense, but I'm going to be that intense. If the judges, when asked for their opinion, go, I don't know, and then call a point, nobody has any faith in that point.
Yeah.
Everybody's upset. And even the person who got awarded the point is like, oh, did I actually get a point? I don't know.
I feel bad when I see it happen.
Yeah.
So
and I get intense about this because I see it at every tournament I go to. And I think it comes from a good place. And I am glad that people want to be humble enough to admit what they don't know and to try to be as fair as they possibly can with the fighters. That, yes, thank you for being a good, kind human. Don't show indecision as a judge. It makes it worse.
And don't look at other people when you're being indecisive. I have literally stood there and watched 3 people look at each other, shrug, look over at someone else, and then just copy them while staring at them. If you don't know, just keep your sticks down or keep whatever you're indicating with down and say, I didn't see something. It's okay. That just means we get another chance to do it again and make it more clear and definitive. It's fine.
If you're genuinely worried, I have seen a couple scenarios, and I'm going to talk vaguely because I don't want to call anybody out, but I have seen a couple scenarios where somebody wasn't sure a call was made, and then they realized that they strongly disagreed with that call. They weren't sure what the right call was, but they strongly disagreed with that call because they had seen something to oppose it. The right thing to do there is go to the center ref. Talk to the center ref about why that felt like a problem to you. The center ref is still God. If they decided and they stick to it, then close your mouth. Your job is to support them. Don't make their job harder or the scenario more frustrating for other people by expressing your indecision or confusion to the crowd. It doesn't help.
Right. So let's segue into the game's operational director, aka the center ref. Center ref's job is primarily, and their number one actually priority, is safety. Because you cannot have an event that is unsafe, and because an unsafe event is never a successful event.
That's true.
Like we used to say in the oil field, our job is to go home at the end of the day. Okay? Our job at the end of a tournament is for everyone to go home with as few injuries and bumps and bruises as possible, and that is their job. If they throw out a point, if they throw out something else, remember, their job is not just to like call people and check on points. Their job is also to keep people safe. So that's why you shouldn't argue with them, because yes, they will at times not be able to see what you're seeing, because one of the things they're looking for is, where are the fighters located? Are they too close to something? Do we need to stop it because of intensity? Is something illegal happening? Is there something else we don't know about? You as the judge have one thing to do. They are doing more than one thing. So acknowledge it. And if you're the center ref and you've never center ref, your number one job is to keep people safe. I don't care who loses or wins, who gets the piece of metal or a little plastic trophy or the $1,000 Albion sword. No one wants to have a surgery that costs them $20,000 to get their hand or a piece of their body put back together.
Yeah, and especially if it's preventable. Don't like over guilt trip yourself if you're a center ref and you're not entirely like. Don't let Kyle's opinion here make you nervous to center ref. But do take it seriously and do remember that your primary job is the safety, and that's you're enforcing the rules, because if you don't enforce the rules, people will be unsafe. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, and another thing is, whenever you are enforcing the rules, be consistent. This is the part that gets people in trouble.
It's hard.
Yeah, it is very hard to be consistent, because as you get tired, you're going to start making errors. Your goal is to make as few errors by practice as possible. We've talked about in other podcasts, but this one as well. Make sure you're taking breaks. Make sure you're switching out. But you need to make sure, if you call something at the beginning this way, and then you find out you did it wrong, guess what? You're probably going to have to do it this way the whole pool, because it would be unfair to one person or two or three people that have gone under and the thing has been wrong the whole time.
Here's a decent perspective. This is a way we think about it in teaching. Because in teaching, I mean, my day is 30 kids at a time for 50 minutes at a time, and they're 12. Like, that's what I do for a living, and I'm trying to force feed them math. Of course they misbehave. Of course they do terrible things to each other. Discipline and managing 12-year-olds is a huge part of my job. And the thing that they drill into us when we're in college for teaching and when we're in continuing ed and in every GORAM staff meeting ever is consistency. That's the thing they preach at you for managing children, is consistency. And I think it's also true for managing HEMAists. That seems clearly accurate to me, is it's got to be consistency. Consistency does not mean you won't make a mistake. You will. You're human. It's going to happen. Consistency means that when you're doing it right, you're doing it the same every time. Consistency means that you are intentionally making sure you don't play favorites. You are intentionally making sure that you remember what you did when this happened last time, so that the next time you do it, you can do the same thing. If you make a mistake, apologize, make it right as much as you can, and move on. We are all human. We all, for the most part, understand, I think. But consistency is about when you're doing it on purpose, make sure it's always the same.
Yeah. Everyone goes to McDonald's because you can get a cheeseburger at McDonald's anywhere, and it's the same cheeseburger.
Well, that's not true. The one down here on 29th Street.
Oh my God, I kill you. Okay. The next thing as a center ref is part of their job is also to keep things moving forward. Tournaments are notorious for running long because a center ref gets bogged down either because of the judges, the fighters, something goes awry. One of their other things is if you're a center ref is you have to keep things moving forward. So that means sometimes you have to throw a call out. Sometimes you have to go, well, the judges said that, we're just going to move on. Sometimes you have to sacrifice little things so that the big thing called the tournament, if Jonathan and me are fighting and I got a bunch of bad calls on me and I'm like, I want to talk to the ref. It's like, no, you don't. I got 50 other fighters who are important to me right now. I'm sorry that this went wrong for you, but you got to be Spock for a little bit and remember the needs of the many outweigh the egos of the few. So you need to keep the tournament and or event moving along because it's about everybody, not just about yourself. And that's why as a judge, you shouldn't argue so much or argue with other people or make their lives harder because as a center ref, I have my eye on the clock a lot because I have to make sure like I'm in time with other people. I know I've been told you have an hour to get this many people through. We have to do our jobs so that everyone is enjoying their experience.
Yeah. All right, and then last point that we want to make for being a center ref, and I think this is the most important one, it is critical that you inspire confidence. This is a cousin point to what I was ranting about a moment ago where you can't show indecision as a judge. You can't say or do things as a center ref that undermine people's confidence in your reffing or the event at large. The bad calls happen. Judges make mistakes, center refs make mistakes, and we all understand. Even the story I joked about a minute ago in Colorado, the call that I'm still sore about. I'm joking about it. It was still a really fun event that I'm glad I was at, and I don't have any big gripes. It was a bad call. It happens. Oh, well. But there is another event I can think of that really, really frustrated me. I'm still frustrated about because the center ref in my pool was clearly confused a couple times and just picked something. And he made sure the entire audience and all the fighters in the pool knew it. That was terrible. I'm still frustrated by that in a legit frustrated way because it didn't feel like there was any consistency. It didn't feel like there was any rubric by which that decision was made other than frustration. Here's the thing. Some things are frustrating. You're going to make a snap decision sometimes as a center ref and people are going to live with it. Try to do it in a way that inspires confidence. There's a moment for humility. There's a moment for recognizing that you could be wrong and being open to correction and criticism. When you're the center ref is not it. When you're the center ref, your decisions, even if later you have to go back and analyze those and learn from that, which you should do, in that moment, if you undermine people's confidence in your calls, everything you did at the tournament that day comes into question. Every emotional fighter and half the non-emotional fighters are going to be frustrated because now they're wondering if they really lost that match or if they really won that match. You need, not that you can't make mistakes, not that you can't be humble and go fix them and make amends when you do. You absolutely should. You should always be a good human. I don't care what your hobby is. But in the moment of the tournament, as the center ref, that's not your moment. Fix that later. Right now, there needs to be confidence that the rules are being followed consistently to the best of your ability. That's what is most important.
Because as a fighter and a competitor, if I'm fighting a judge, say like we have a judge that I know is like not calling stuff for me or is just biased or is inexperienced.
Sure.
I mentally can deal with that. If I'm fighting the judge let me rephrase that. If I'm fighting the center ref, I'm already done. I do not feel like I want to be at this tournament anymore. I don't feel like any of my fighting is going to be like even judged, not fairly, but at all. Like I don't feel like, because that's their job, is to make sure that what happened is called and recorded. I did this by the rule set, I win. Because this is a game. If I was in the middle of playing basketball and someone hands you a football, you're going to be very confused. And then suddenly it's like, oh yeah, now you can tackle. It's like, this is not what I thought it was. And it's like, okay, now we get tennis rackets. And you're just like over there going like, what acid trip have I fallen into? But that's what happens whenever you have somebody who just is inconsistent. You don't know what to do, and it's not only a bad mental space, but it's dangerous because I've seen people who like this didn't get called, so they rev it up and they hit harder, and then that gets called. So then I rev up and hit them hard again, and then they give me a warning for like hitting too hard, and I'm like, you're not consistently calling things, because if I light tap, I get told it's not good. Right. If I hit hard, it got called. When I hit hard again, I then get told that's too hard. I need to hit lighter. And then it's just like, you're not being consistent, and now I don't know what I'm supposed to do.
And that is exacerbated by visible indecision. Mm-hmm. Not that you can't take a minute to make a call. Not that you can't weigh the evidence in front of you and consult your judges. You absolutely should, because calling the judges to the center and consulting them and talking about what they saw versus what you saw, that inspires confidence. Mm-hmm. And that's good.
You're doing it every single time, though.
Yeah, but that's more about timekeeping than it is about the inspiring confidence. Mm-hmm. What you can't do is be visibly confused and then make a decision anyways.
Yeah,
that's the key thing here.
Oh, that good. I'll just call it for them. It's like you're sinking.
Yeah, you're shooting yourself in the foot. You really are. Yeah, I think that hits our list. Was there anything else you thought of while we were going down it?
No, I think that is a good summary of just like, if you're needing something to like put in your brain and practice. And yet again, just like the other one, you gotta practice being a judge. Good judges make good center refs, I believe. And so like, become a good judge first. Learn to follow before you lead. Once you lead,
good advice.
Usually we dress up as center refs. When you put that uniform as the Superman suit on.
I need to get to be a center ref just so I can wear my ties to the tournament. That'd be so good.
When you put the Superman suit on, you have to be Superman. Leave Clark Kent at home. You have to have the confidence that you're doing it the way that it needs to be done.
Yeah, it's about knowing your limits to a certain extent, and that's true for judging, and that's true for center reffing as well. All right, so on the wrap up on this one, I want to have a little bit of fun because I don't think you'll find a more animated topic to discuss in HEMA than judging. Everybody has an opinion. Everybody has a bad story, and that's wonderful. I'm not saying that's negative. I love it. So be nice, but in the comments on this one, I would really love to hear your thoughts on what you think makes a good and a bad judge. These are ours. It doesn't make us God. It doesn't make us right. Let's hear your thoughts. And specifically, I'm going to start this flame war on purpose. Tell us what you think about some kind of a certification program or system for judges. Would that be good for HEMA? Would it suck? Would it kill us? Would it help us? Should we have a governing body that says you are allowed to judge at events? You are not. How would we decide? Y'all scream at each other about it, all right?
I like that idea.
Isn't that going to be fun?
I might read those comments.
Yeah, there we go. We might even get Kyle to read something. All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Glad you were hung around. We are Fighting Words. Have a good one.
Mm-hmm.